guys, so let's continue on with the crafting slash inventory setup. So just a little teaser here, just to show you guys that I'm not just replicating an inventory and trying to throw some sort of half-baked crafting system on top. So if I hit play in this project here, the one I originally showed, if I collect some rocks, I'll collect all 8. If I open up my crafting menu, I have this giant rock for testing recipe. You can see it requires 1 rock, and I have 8 rocks. So I hit craft. It's not fully implemented, but you see a little debug message. Then when I refresh it, I now have 7 rocks. If I was to craft it 3 times, I have 4. And if I was to play again and select something else and go pick some other items up and then collect some rocks and something else and some more rocks and do the same, you'll see I have 4 rocks at the end there. I hit craft, refresh, I have 3 rocks, same as in my inventory. So we will get there, but let's continue on today with filling in some more information in the inventory widget. So let's open our project. So when we left off, you could pick up a variety of items that you created from the master item blueprint as child blueprints, and when you open the inventory, it would display them. However, while they were clickable, we weren't able to get their actual details. So let's go ahead and fill those in so that our inventory is a little more full-fledged. So let's jump into our inventory main widget. And so item name, that should be the first one we go to. That one's pretty easy. So that way when we click on an item, it will display the name here. So what we want to do is under content for the text block, we want to hit the bind button. We want to create what's called the binding. So click on it and then hit the plus for create binding. It will bring you into the graph for a new function called getText0. Now the first thing I always do, and what I suggest doing, is renaming that to something meaningful. In this case, it will be something like item name text setter, or getter, I guess. So what we want to do, we'll give it some space. We want to drag in our character as a get, and then off of that we want to grab our inventory widget. By the way, I'm working in 4.8 now, and so with our inventory in there, then we'll want to drag off the inventory array and do a get. Now we don't have an index to get yet, we're going to fix that in a second. Then we want to break this structure here, and we want to get the item name and simply cast it into the return value, just like that. So this won't work in its current form because we don't have an index. We need to fill that in somehow so that it's fully dynamic. Otherwise, you'd somehow have to fill in the index in some way with each item clicked. And how we're going to do that is, well, fully dynamic. What we're going to do is go into our inventory button widget, and we're going to select the button that we created. That's the invisible one, the one we set the background color to fully invisible. So we want to select that button, and you'll see events on clicked here in the details panel. So press that, and this will create a new event for on clicked for that button. Let's give it a memorable name too. We'll call it button inventory item. So on clicked, hit the plus. It'll bring us into our inventory button graph. So when the inventory item button is clicked, what we want to do is set a variable in our character. So we need to go into our character, create a new variable, and we'll just call it inv button clicked. And we'll make that an integer since indexes work off integers. We can even give it a tooltip saying that this is the current inventory item that we clicked on. Compile and save that. Go back to the inventory button. Now what we can do, we can drag in the first person character, hold down control for a getter. Off of that, we can grab our inventory again. Then off of the inventory, we want to do a find. And what we want to find is get item data. That's from this blueprint. And then that finds the index for us when we click on it. And so what we want to do is we want to come off of my character and we want to search for our inv button clicked. We want to set it, however. So when it's clicked, we want to set that. And then we'll take the integer return value, which is actually the index, and we'll set that value to the index. With 4.8's new rewrote system, we'll double click here to create a rewrote node. Oh, sorry, maybe I am working 4.7 still. Yeah, I haven't switched versions, but you can easily switch versions in excuse me, in this project, and everything will work just the same. So with that done, we are good to go. Compile and save. Now we can go back to our main inventory widget, and now all we have to do is just drag off our character and get inv button clicked. That'll get our index, plug it right into the index there. Perfect. So compile and save. Let's give it a test run. So let's pick up a sword in a box, open up our inventory. Like I said, we'll fix that moving around too if I have time in this video. So when we hit sword, as you can see, we get sword, and when I hit box, I get box. Give that a try again. Open up the inventory, we get no name, it's returning null. However, when we do that, we get the name of what we click on. However, we have an issue. By default, if we do pick up an item, even though we haven't clicked on it yet, it's still displaying the first index. So to fix that, what we need to do is go into our first person character blueprint, and on our open inventory flip-flop input action, right after we add it to the viewport, we want to set that new variable inventory button clicked. So I'm gonna control drag it in. Sorry, that would be an alt drag. We want to set it to -1, -1 meaning null. So now compile, save, play. So now if I just pick up a box and hit I for inventory, it doesn't show us a name until we actually select something, and then that index actually gets set. If we close the inventory and reopen, again it's set. So we're good to go. And we'll be adding some more stuff in here to fix the fact that we can move around and stuff. But anyways, we'll get to that later. I find that not critically essential. So back in the main inventory widget, we have our name set. So we can go into the designer and look at what other details we need. Weight and details and picture. So they're all going to be very similar. So we'll grab weight. We'll go bind, create binding. We'll give it a name called item weight getter. I'm going to go to the last function we just made. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to paste it. And all we need to do this time is just take weight in. Compile and save. Go back to the designer. We'll grab details. Bind it. Paste. Details. Delete that one. Compile and save. Go back. Now for the picture, we do the same thing. What we do is we want to grab the actual picture, not the size block image or the border image, but the actual image itself. And we want to bind the brush. So we'll bind, create binding. This one's a little bit different. Oops, I forgot to set that last one up. Item details getter. This one will be get item thumbnail. So what we want to do here is we can't simply, well, first of all, we'll paste. We can't simply just connect a texture 2D reference into what it wants as a return value. What it wants is a slate brush. You'll see a slate brush structure. So what we can do is drag off that and we can make a slate brush. You can choose an image size. Like I said, I like 128 by 128. I'm going to draw it as an image. And the image, we just want to pull from the thumbnail. We can collapse that back together. So it will make a slate brush from our texture 2D when this gets called. So we can compile and save. And we can give it another quick test. So we pick up a box and a sword. Inventory. Now it's setting our weight as 0. Anyways, we'll get to that in a minute. So we select box. We get box. It's 5 kilograms. This is a cube-shaped box. It can do many things. It's a great box. And sword. It's 2.5 kilograms. Blah, blah, blah. And you see we get the little preview picture. I created it the same for each one. But you can, of course, create your own. Anyways, so the weight. Weight. So the reason it is getting set to 0 is due to the fact that we're passing a float in, and when there's no item selected, so when our index is -1 for inventory button selected, like when it's clicked, when it's set to -1, which we do right in there, basically it just chooses a default value of 0 because we haven't told it otherwise. It has a return value, but it just can't pull one out, so it just goes straight to 0. So to fix that, all we need to do is get rid of that. We want to break this, and we're going to create a new variable which we will call item weight temp. And we'll make it a string. Just a placeholder for a weight to set a null value when no item button is clicked on. So what we want to do is take a branch, so hold down B and click, connect up the execution wire. So the condition is when inventory item select, when inventory button clicked is equal, and we can do this neater, but this is the quick way, is equal to -1. So basically when we set it as we did in the character, so when we set it to null, so if it is null, then we want to set this item temporary weight string to, well, null. So we could leave it as it is, we could give it a space, whatever works for you. And then return to there. And if false, so if it's any other value, if it's a selected item, then what we want to do is we want to set it, and we want to set it to its actual weight. And with that done, now we need to return the item weight temporary string. You can do it that way, or I found an easier way. You can just go right off of item weight temp in the false and just drag it right there. Makes it a little bit cleaner. So hit compile and save and play. Now when we pick up some items, open up our inventory. Now it's completely blank until we select something. So this is very basic, but it's an inventory and it works. So I'm gonna leave it there. Let's quickly fix the focusing issues and the moving issues, and then we'll start on the crafting menu. So we'll go into our first person character, and we're going to be replacing this flip-flop. It was just a placeholder. So we need to create an actual condition for it. So if you hit play, you'll notice when we press I for inventory, we can still look around, we can still move, and to actually get into the inventory, we can still even pick up items and they don't show up. But to actually get into the inventory when we're pieing when we're playing in the editor, we need to hit Shift F1 to get the cursor. So we need to fix that. And that is all based off of the player controller. So let's take all these nodes and let's drag them up. Let's give ourselves some room. I like to work vertically. So what we need to do is create some custom events. So let's create a custom event. Add custom event, which we will call, we could use this for the crafting menu too. So I'm going to give it a generic name just called freeze player. And then we'll create another custom event called unfreeze player. You know what, I'm going to keep it short. I'm just going to go car for character. Rename that freeze car. Freeze and unfreeze. Perfect. We'll put them in the top corners there like I like them. And so what we want to do is we want to get the player controller. So that is the player controller class that is currently being used in the game mode. And there is a ton of stuff you can do with the player controller. If I just type in mouse, you'll see all sorts of click events, mouse over, touch events, all sorts of things. And so that's what we're going to be using. So what we want to do is drag off of that. And we want to set mouse over events to true. So that'll allow us to hover over things and such. And we want to drag off. And we want to enable click events. So that'll, whoops, we don't want to get it, we want to set it. Set click events. Set that to true, so that way we'll be able to click things and they will execute in order. And then we want to show the mouse cursor, of course. So mouse cursor, set B show mouse cursor to true. Yes, we do want to show the mouse cursor. And then we'll create a new variable called player is car frozen and make that a boolean. So if true, the player cannot move or look around and the mouse cursor is shown. So by default we want that to be false, and we want to set it up here to true. So the character's frozen when we freeze the character. So okay, we need to make a little more room. We'll drag those over. We also, well, no, actually we can keep them nice and even with the get player controller there. So after we set that, we want to set a couple more things too. We want to set ignore look input. Very useful. What it does is it basically, if you have a player controller that is able to look around, it prevents the character from being able to look around. And if true, look input is ignored. Yes, we want that to be true. And we also need movement. So it works the same way. Player movement will be stopped. So drag off of the player controller, set ignore move input. We want that to be true. Be new move. Yep, true. Perfect. And we only want these to happen once and then get reset. Otherwise, you would essentially get frozen forever. So we'll just hold down D and click to, ooh, that's a delay. Sorry, hold down O and click to get it do once and get it crammed in there. And put the execution wires in. I'm going to move all this over just a couple spaces. Say to the next little, yeah, that looks nice to me. I'd obviously spend time rerouting this, but I'm going for speed here. So all we need to do now is copy that and paste it for unfreeze. And for unfreeze, we simply want to do the reverse. So disable mouse over, disable click events, don't show the mouse cursor. The character is now unfrozen, and we want to allow looking, and we want to allow moving. And we need to set the targets to the player controller. And then, so once this is done, we want to come down and reset the do once, because the do once will only fire once. If we didn't reset it, then we'd only be able to unfreeze once, and we'd only be able to freeze once, and then you'd be frozen forever. So after we unfreeze, then we're allowed to freeze again, and after we freeze, then we're allowed to unfreeze again. So just take the end of the execution string and bring it into its reset above. You can see the highlighted wire here if I hover over it, which way it goes, like so. Alrighty, so that will fix a lot of our problems. So now, like I said, we can replace that flip-flop placeholder. So what we want to do, we'll bring this down to regular height. Delete the flip-flop, and we want a branch instead. So hold down B and click, and on pressed, we want a branch. And condition, is character frozen? So just drop it right on there. We'll bring it down here. So when it's pressed, it checks, is the character frozen? Well, if the character is frozen right here, that means we cannot move at all. So if the character is frozen, it basically means he can't move. Then what we want to do, I guess that Boolean actually doesn't make sense. It should be more like can character move? So if the character can move, that'd be a true. Then when it's pressed, we want to call that custom event, so freeze character. And then we want to go ahead and do our logic here. We want to create the widget, we want to add it to viewport, and we want to set our index to -1. If the character, so if false, so if the character can't move, then we want to unfreeze the character, so call unfreeze, call functions, just like that. And then we want to remove from parent, so we want to remove the widget. And so a couple quick things we can add here is there's some neat little functions here. The first one is set input. Let's see, I can't see. Set input mode, game and UI. So it checks if we're using the widget basically, and if we are, it allows us to use it. If not, then it allows us to go back into the game essentially. So that is fine just like that. And then its inverse is set input mode game only. And I'll go ahead and explain these more when we go through a commenting episode, but for now we'll just comment this freeze/unfreeze character move/look and enable mouse events/cursor. And this one is open/close inventory. We'll zoom out and move those properly so we can actually see what we've written when we're zoomed out. I would like to go to -12 and then just line them up about like that. Perfect. Okay, cool. So we'll compile and save and give it a test. So now we can look around and move at start, and we'll pick some stuff up. And now when we hit the I button, for inventory, nothing works. Why is that? And that is because I have these backwards. So the true should go down there, and the false should go up there. So I was right the first time. Is car frozen? If not, then freeze them. If yes, then unfreeze. Compile, save, play. And I was using the execution flow to check why that was. So anyways, now we can move around like normal, pick up items like normal. However, when we press the I button, I can't look around, and we instantly get a mouse cursor, and WASD does nothing. But it doesn't pause the game. We could pause the game if we wanted, but no, everything is still allowed to happen in the background. That's pretty standard. And then we can go ahead and click on our items. You'll see though, however, if I don't click on a part of the inventory, that I still shoot. So that's where that set input mode game and UI comes in. If you don't like that, then set it to UI only. So let's get started. I consider that a fully fledged prototype inventory. There's a lot we can add to it, but for speed, and I don't want to get too complex making a custom inventory here on my own, let's start on the crafting. So we'll set our crafting color to green. We'll set our inventory to, yeah, we can set it to red. I don't think we'll need it anymore. And we'll still need actor. Item thumbnails. I'm gonna go ahead and make a new folder called items. I'm gonna place all the item stuff in there. So move those in there. Set this to yellow because we will be using it. And we want to create a new folder called crafting. We'll set that to green. We will be using it. And in crafting, we want to set a couple things up. So first we want to right click and create a new blueprint structure. We'll call this s_crafting main. Same as our inventory. Could even go craft main, but whatever works. So in that structure, we want some variables, obviously. What do we want? Well, I built this off a recipe system, so I want a recipe name. It's very similar to the inventory. It just has different functionality. So on a recipe name, we want, and that will be a string. We want details to tell us what this recipe builds, etc. Details, just like an item details. We want an item thumbnail. You know what are we crafting? That's going to be a texture 2D. And we want an is unlocked. I'm going to add in the feature to allow you to unlock items at different experience levels. I'm not going to show you, well, maybe later I'll show you how to actually make a level system. But for now, we'll just have a simple locked and unlocked that you can change at different times. And we need that's a Boolean, sorry. We need item class, and that will be an actor class. Let autosave go. And so that will be the actual class that we're crafting. We want item ID, same as, that'll be a float, same as the inventory, just to be sure that everything's safe. And then you simply just need an integer for every single kind of item in the game that you want to craft with. So for now, let's start with metal, since we have swords and we have a box. So let's go metal and wood. And just for kicks, let's go nails I'm just thinking sword and box, wood and nails, metal, and what else would you create a sword out of? Maybe, well, we'll just have the three. Keep it simple. That way we'll show you how to use two, the wood and the nails, and just one for the sword metal. So save that structure, close out of it. We can close this sword out. Inventory button, inventory main, box. We'll keep the first person character open. And in the crafting folder, we want to create a new blueprint class, which again is going to be an actor. It's going to work similar to the inventory. And like I said, these are linked. I created them to be linked and dynamic with each other. So that's going to be BP underscore master crafting. I believe that's how I set mine up. And in there, we need a variable, which will be what do we just call that structure? Structure crafting main. We'll just call it crafting recipe. We'll go S underscore. In fact, you know what? That's what I'm going to call this structure. It'll be fine. So anyways, the variable, crafting recipe. And that is going to be of the type structure underscore crafting main. And we just want to make sure that's editable. And we need another variable. Now, I haven't come up with a way to dynamically create recipes or like access recipes without them being in the level. And so if you guys have an answer to that, I've thought about using data tables. I thought about some C++, but there's really, I thought for quite a while on, I couldn't figure a way around it. So you will have to have each recipe spawned into your level to be able to use them. That's the only major disadvantage. Well, I don't want to call it a major disadvantage. It's only big disadvantage to this setup though. And so what that means is you need to manually add your recipes to the master crafting blueprints and then compile it every single time you add a new recipe. And so every time you add a new recipe, so every time you right click, create blueprint based on this, and then say this is like, we'll go BP underscore sword recipe. Every time you create a new recipe, you'll have to come in here. We'll have a variable called crafting recipe classes. That's going to be of the type, can't even remember now. It's going to be of the type of itself, but it's class. And that's because we're going to be spawning the classes. So BP, come on, where are you? BP master crafting class, not the object, but the class. And we want that to be an array. So every time you create a new recipe like the sword recipe, you need to come in here, you need to add it, you need to select it, like add an index, select it. So you also want master crafting to be index 0. It doesn't have to be index 0, I don't think, but that's how I set it up. So better to be safe than sorry. Actually, you know what? No, I think I fixed that. We don't need that, so we'll delete this index. So just every time you create a new recipe, you need to come in, add it, and then recompile your BP master crafting, and then that'll fix it. And you want to set that to editable as well. So compile and save. So with that done, let's just set up our sword recipe quick. So recipe name, simple sword. Details, this is a sword that we can craft. I don't have a thumbnail of a sword, so I'm just going to use the crosshair again. Is unlocked. Yes, we want it to be an unlocked recipe. We'll make a locked one after. The item class is going to be whatever you want it to craft. And so we want to craft a sword. so we choose BP sword. Item ID doesn't matter, and we want it to, let's say we want it to use 3 metals, so 3 metal units from our inventory. So compile and save. And actually, before we get too far in the crafting, we should probably set up item stacking. Like, so what I was talking about item stacking in the last video. That's where when you select more than one item that you want to stack, like swords wouldn't, but it puts them together. So we will set that up in the next video. But just for kicks, I'm about at my time limit. We'll go into the crafting GUI. And we already have the widget set up, so we'll just get started with that. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save all, close out of this, since many of you may have been working in 4.7.6. Take our project, right click, switch Unreal Engine version 4.8. Okay, since we have no code, it doesn't create any project files, and we'll open it in 4.8. I'm going to show you one of my favorite things for working with GUIs in 4.8 that they have added. Alright, we want to restore assets. Now, is this project going to work in 4.8? It should work perfectly fine, except for the mesh. So we'll hit play. Okay, yeah, it looks like it still works in 4.8 just fine. Perfect. Alright, cool. So, yeah, the crafting menu. So what we want to do is first just drag out your game window, make it a little bit bigger here. And what we're going to do is just pick a part of your game that you like and hit the arrow and go high resolution screenshot. And the stock settings are fine, and take a screenshot. I see it saved somewhere, so open up that link there. Close out of this. You can reset the viewport. Then we'll go into the GUI designer for crafting. So this cool thing they added in 4.8, if you go right into the graph and drag up the details here, we have a preview background. This is brand new. So what we want to do is go into your content folder and drag that screenshot in. Come on. You'll see it's just a screenshot of our game. And if we go to a widget and the designer tab in the graph and the preview background option, it allows you to choose a texture. So we're going to choose that screenshot, save everything, compile and save. If we go into the designer, now we get a nice preview of our game, so we can actually see what it would look like in game. So you could even take a screenshot while you're playing so that you know exactly what it looks like. I really like that feature. So we're at the 40-minute mark. We'll get the crafting menu to sort of basic laid out. So yeah, we'll start with a canvas panel, and we'll start with some borders here. So we'll drag a border out, and we'll resize that. Whoops. So that'll be our recipe list. I'll drag another border in. That'll be to compare required versus items that we have. And another border will be the crafting preview window. And all the buttons for actually crafting. So something like that. You could set it up any way you like. And we'll change those colors. I'm going to use the color that I used in my other game, because that way locked and unlocked can have their own oh, what the heck am I trying to think of? Locked can be light or dark, and unlocked can be light, basically. So for the last, or for all of them here, we want the brush color to be, let's see, 407D98FF. Yes, something along those lines. I went a little bit darker though. A lot darker, something like that. So we'll copy that and we'll set all the borders to that. And we'll name them. So this is going to be border recipe list. This is going to be border item comparison. And this is going to be border preview and buttons. Alright, so getting about to our time limit here. So we'll just throw a size box into each of these. And probably a vertical box into each of those, I guess. So throw a vertical box into each of the size boxes. And that is all I have time for, guys. This has gotten on a lot longer than I intended. We still have some work to do in the inventory. I want to make it full-fledged, but I just wanted to show you guys that we got the crafting menu started. And so in the next video, we will we'll see if we can't finish up the inventory. In fact, I'm going to set that color back to yellow. I set HUD to orange. So in the next video, we'll get item stacking going, like I said, so that some items can stack and some can't. So like I said, things like a sword, you would only be able to hold like one copy of, like sword, but something like, you know, a bottle of ale would be stackable, so you'd have like 6 bottles of ale all together in one button. So we'll set up item stacking in the next video, and hopefully we can finish that quick and then get on to the crafting, and we're not far away from having a full-fledged crafting system. And then after that, we'll go on to maybe an equip system and some polish, and maybe further into an ability system to lock and unlock recipes dynamically. But anyways, so hopefully that's teased you guys a little bit, and we got some more done. So anyways, if you liked it and learned something, please like the video and subscribe for more videos. I will try to get the next one as soon as possible. I hope you did learn something, and I hope you guys are enjoying 4.8. Whatever we do, however, we'll work in 4.8 or 4.7.6 if you're still using it, or 4.6 for that matter. Anyways, that is it for now. So thanks again for watching from the team here at Unreal Tech, divisionalblendertech.com. We're on social media, on the links on your screen, and don't forget our motto, create your way. So we will see you next time.